40 days on from the Prime Minister's rain-soaked election announcement. It is the final push for votes this week from all parties.
We're going to hear from Labour a little later on in the programme.
Yeah, but now we're joined by the Conservatives. James Cleverly, Home Secretary, good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Should explain to our viewers that every night we get a press release from the main parties telling us what they're going to be campaigning on in the day ahead. And yours for today, it doesn't outline any new policies of your own. Instead, it's only attacking Labour on migration numbers and budgets. And I guess it begs the question, have you run out of positive things to say about your own cause?
No, what we have seen today in the news is the energy price cap, which is in place because of the decisions that Rishi Sunak made, is going to be saving families money. We're helping with the cost of living. We've got inflation back down to 2%. We've kept unemployment low. We've got the fastest growing economy in the G7. We've got wages growing faster than prices for a number of months now. So we have achieved, despite some very, very difficult global economic circumstances, I think a really important thing. But the reason we're highlighting those figures is because, of course, immigration is an important issue at the election. It is the area of policy that I'm responsible for. And what we have seen from Labour is, in the weeks leading up to this election, suddenly an interest in immigration, which is completely at odds with the tone that they have taken for a very, very long time. So we're highlighting their hypocrisy on this. They voted against stronger border controls over 130 times. They have sent the signal out to the people smuggling network that the UK under Labour will be a soft touch, which will inevitably see illegal immigration go through the roof. And that is a real danger. We're highlighting that to voters today because we are the only party that is absolutely determined to protect our borders and crack down on this evil, illegal people smuggling trade.
We will talk to Labour in just a moment and talk to them about their policies. Let's talk to you about your policies, because you accuse them of being hypocritical. But I guess your critics would say, you know, hang on, aren't you being hypocritical here? You lecture other parties on what works with migration, and yet your own record on migration, illegal migration, record numbers of crossings of small boats across the channel over the last few months. That's not a great record for you to be able to crow about, is it, this morning?
Well, we are determined to bring those numbers down. So on the other side of the equation with legal migration, I took decisions which were opposed by Labour at the time, which have already started to bring those figures down and are projected to bring the figures down in the future by as much as 300,000. Labour opposed them at the time, but those are the decisions that I have taken. With regard to illegal migration, it is incredibly difficult, and I concede that. But we are going after the engines, we're going after the boats, we're going after the illegal money. The National Crime Agency is working with law enforcement in Europe. I signed an agreement with Frontex, the EU's border control agency. We've got the Rwanda scheme. Labour keeps saying they're going to do less. They're going to scrap the Rwanda scheme.
They don't say that.
They are going to scrap the Rwanda scheme. They've said they're going to do that, even if it's working, they've said. They've also, their big announcements are to create these new agencies, the Border Command, which already exists, and a returns unit, which already exists. So they're going to do nothing that we are not already doing, and somehow they claim that's going to bring illegal migration down. It is just not credible. And the only intervention recently that Keir Starmer's had on this is this weird dog whistle attack on the Bangladeshi community, where he's claiming that that we are not returning people to Bangladesh, which was A, not true, and B, not relevant, because the Bangladeshi community make a tiny, less than 0.5% of small boat arrivals. So I know why they don't want to talk about immigration, because whenever they do talk about it, they put their foot in their mouth, and people can see through this. They are not committed to controlling our borders. Only the Conservative Party is.
The Sunday Times, Rupert Murdoch paper, endorsed Labour over the weekend for the first time since 2005. So too have the Financial Times and The Economist. The Sunday Times said that Rishi Sunak has cut an embattled, almost cursed figure. The Conservative Party has lurched through a series of self-inflicted mishaps. The Conservatives have, in effect, forfeited the right to govern. That is damning, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't agree with it.
Of course you don't.
Of course I don't, so I don't know why you asked me. I mean, the point is,
Well,
we've got inflation down to 2%.
I'm asking you because in our culture, it is a significant moment, isn't it, when a big newspaper that's read by hundreds of thousands of people comes out and declares who it thinks should be the government, and they don't like you anymore.
And let me explain why I disagree with it. We have got inflation down to 2%. We have maintained low levels of unemployment. Wages are growing faster than prices now for many, many months. We have ensured that the economy, the UK economy, is growing faster than any other country in the GDP, in the G7. GDP is growing. GDP per capita is growing. So we have experienced over the last few years an unprecedented set of circumstances. COVID, Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine. And despite that, we have made sure that we protected people through the furlough scheme, protected people through the energy price cap and fuel bill support.
These papers know all that, and they've got all the papers, they've got all the analysis, they've looked through all the numbers, and they don't think you're the right party to run the country anymore.
And I disagree with them. And the reason that this is so important is because Labour have already said they are going to gerrymander the system. They have said they're going to pack out the House of Lords. They've said they're going to get votes at 16. They're going to give votes for foreign nationals. They're probably going to give votes for criminals. They've not said that. They are determined to have a permanent Labour government, and they are quite willing to distort the British political system to get that. That is what is at stake. This is not an election which is about giving the Conservatives a bit of a telling off. And many people might think that is legitimate. This is about the next 5 years and beyond. And Labour are going to put up taxes. That is inevitable because of the spending commitments they've already made, let alone the ones they've hidden from people. They have said they're going to distort the political system. And I think there's a real risk, there is a genuine risk that they take a majority, if that is what they get, to try and lock in their power permanently, because they don't really feel confident they are going to be able to make a credible case to the British people at the next general election. That's why they've been so quiet in this general election.
We will speak to them in the next few minutes about their plans, especially on the economy, which they've said they will not be raising taxes. Do you think you'll still be Home Secretary on Friday morning?
The reason I don't believe them is because where they do run things, they put taxes up. They are more expensive when they're running local government, regional government, city government. They put taxes
Let's talk
up
about
higher
you.
than Conservatives.
Let's talk about you. Do you think you'll still be Home Secretary on Friday morning?
Well, I hope to be. Look, that decision is in the hands of the voters, both in Braintree and nationally. What we are doing is we're putting forward our case for keeping the economy growing, keeping taxes as low as possible, easing the burden on hardworking families. That's the case we're putting forward. People will compare that to the high tax agenda of the Labour Party. I hope they recognise that this election really, really matters, and that they should vote to keep their taxes low rather than their taxes go up. If that happens, and that happens widely enough, and we're able to form a government, I really hope that I get to stay as Home Secretary, because it's an important job and it's a privilege to serve.
James Cleverly, thank you very much indeed. And there's a full list